signs, John. You read the tea leaves. What does that contract say about Peters' future?
Well, it says Lane eventually is going to be the left tackle. I can't imagine any way that lasting longer than this particular year, because it would be really, really difficult to go long term with those two contracts at both tackle positions. So you just played the clip, and Doug has said he'd like to have Jason Peters back next season. By the way, I'm not sold on that. There's every bit of chance that Lane could be moved to the left side. They could use that number 13 overall pick on the tackle and start them out on the right side and sort of save some money on the cap by moving on from Jason Peters, who was 34 years old. And in a lot of ways, I wrote last night, this might come down to the quarterback or the left tackle, because I'm not sure.
Interesting.
If you want Sam Bradford at $20 million, if you can pay both Jason Peters and Lane Johnson.
Any chance Peters restructures?
There's always a chance. I mean, he's got to realize he's 34. He's got to realize he's got 3 years left on his contract. It's significant money. And he kind of understands, or he should understand, that he's not going to see all that money. He's not going to be able to play out that contract without restructuring. So if he's of the mindset that, sure, I'll redo my deal, then that betters the opportunity for him to be here. But after the season, if you remember, he talked about being the best left tackle on this team. He talked about nobody in that locker room could do the job better than him. He talked about certainly a draft choice couldn't do the job. And he's probably right. But, you know, you also have to add into the equation that Lane Johnson's 8 years younger, and that's a big, big thing. And there's an old adage in football, it's better to give up a year early on a player rather than a year late, and that could be what's coming down sort of the turnpike with Jason Peters.
What about Lane Johnson's contract? Is this a classic Howie Roseman? How do you read into the money that he got? I mean, I thought he got a left tackle deal. I mean, he's the highest paid right tackle in football, but that contract indicates that, as you said, you're going to be the left tackle at some point.
Yeah, he got a left tackle deal. You're right. It's still a team-friendly deal. All these deals have been. I tweeted out the salary cap. It's going to raise by about $11 million. Could be a little bit less. Could be a little bit more than that. But most people have it pegged right around $11 million. So you do have more money to play with, and that's why it's how he's so quick to make these deals, and I think they've all been prudent deals. This one, because all of a sudden, if you get to the new salary cap figure, these contracts are not going to look as large as they did previously.
John McMullen has more at 97.3ESPN.com on Jason Peters and signing of Lane Johnson. Does it behoove them, John, to try to get another year out of Peters and fix some other areas?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the best case scenario. It really would. The question is, can you do it? And I think it encapsulates so much more, starting with the quarterback. It would be great if you could play another year with Jason and Lane out at tackle and try to upgrade the interior of the line, which was really the bigger issue even last year. So, for the short term, it would be great. I just don't know if that's going to be possible, and a lot of other stuff enters into it. What do they feel comfortable with at number 13 overall? Do they feel more comfortable with a quarterback potential prospect there, an offensive tackle? There's a lot more tackles that are surefire number one picks at number 13 overall than quarterbacks. So that might enter into it.
You know, I'm noticing, and I talked about this in the first hour, John, a lot of praise from the agent of Lane Johnson about Howie Roseman. They signed Roseman, they signed Ertz, a lot of guys. I think that's a pretty good indication that Howie Roseman was running things in that draft a couple of years ago. If anybody thought Chip might have had some influence. Is this a clear sign that Roseman was definitively in charge back in 2013, that first draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was in charge, but certainly Chip had some power. I think if you go back to that draft, the Eagles' first thought was to go after Deion, the defensive end from Oregon, and obviously there's a reason why, and that's because Chip wanted him. Miami got up there and drafted him. Hasn't worked out for them because he's been suspended for the personal performance-enhancing drug policy. And the Lane pick has worked out great. So while Howie was certainly in charge, Chip still had some power at the time. He wanted a different player. It's lucky he didn't get that player. So I think you enter all that into it because I believe the Eagles would have Deion Jordan if they had an opportunity.
All right, John, moving forward here, Roseman gets the deal done with Lane Johnson. Let me ask you about Johnson. He's been a pretty steady, pretty solid guy. Do you like the contract? I mean, is this a deal that you would give a thumbs up to?
Yeah, and I think it's going to look a lot better, as I said. When the new league year starts and the new salary cap is set, it's going to look a lot better than it looks today. We keep hearing about largest guaranteed money for right tackle, fourth largest overall for any tackle, and you say, wow. Well, Lane's not in that category. I agree with that. But as you see guys coming forward, and when their contracts are up, it's not going to look nearly as bad. We've already seen Travis Kelce sign today with the Kansas City Chiefs. His extension got a little bit more than Zach Ertz. And you're going to see Jordan Reed get a little bit more than both of them probably. So while you see things and sort of a myopic viewpoint the day they happen, you have to look at it down the road, and that's what I've always said. Howie does as good as anybody. He realizes the market, and that's what he does better than Chip Kelly. He understands the entire NFL and the contract structure of this league, and trust me, all three of these contracts, that and Brett Selleck, are very, very team-oriented deals.
John, moving forward here, we know the Curry stuff. We've talked a lot about that in the future for him. But, Lane Johnson's agent, said Howie's outstanding. He gets a lot of these things done. Curry is a guy, too, I guess, was part of a Roseman draft. He was part of that last Reed year, but a lot of people think Roseman was kind of handling that. So I guess that might be a good omen then if you want to get Vinny Curry back in the fold.
Yeah, it is. There's no question. Vin Curry was gone if Chip Kelly was back as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was out the door. So when things shifted and Howie got personnel control, Doug Peterson became the head coach, and more importantly, Jim Schwartz became the defensive coordinator. Now all of a sudden he understands there's a place for him. So it's much more likely that Vinny stays. There was no chance he was going to be here if they continued with 3-4 defense, whether Chip would have fired Billy Davis and moved in another direction, he was still going to use that scheme, and Vinny wasn't going to be a part of it. So it's far more likely than it is because I think he understands there's going to be a lot of money for him on the open market.
I want to shift some gears to some NFL stuff here. A couple news notes. You mentioned Travis Kelce. He signs that big contract extension with the Chiefs today. A couple more million than Ertz got. $5 million, 5 years, $46 million for the tight end there. So you look at that position, Ertz and Kelce, you're seeing that position has become a much more important and valuable position in the NFL.
And I think the league as a whole, the new terminology is spread and shred league, and that's what everybody calls the offenses. And to do that, when you have 4 or 5 on the field at times, you need a tight end who can be more of an H-back, a movement tight end, than a Y-back, which is the traditional inline tight end. And we've all seen it with Jimmy Graham before his injury last year. He was probably the prototype, and guys like Zach Ertz and Tyler Eifert and Travis Kelce, Jordan, another guy, as I mentioned. That's what everybody wants, and it's about catching the football, and it's about spreading out those defenses, and that's why you see these big contracts coming at that position.
Let me get your quick thoughts, too, before we get to some other NFL national stuff. Fletcher Cox, do you think that something gets done with him shortly?
Yeah, I do, and I'm surprised by that. There's whispers that deal's going to get done really soon. We'll see how it works out. Obviously, it's just a Pro Bowl. I don't think it's going to happen. The earliest it would happen would be next week. But there's a guy who I think should bet on himself. I've talked about it before. If there's one guy, he's got room to play with, and so do the Eagles for that matter. So that's another smart decision by Howie Roseman. If he can get this done now, he's going to save a lot of money. Otherwise, if Fletcher gets a full season under Jim Schwartz, I think he could put up some serious numbers, and more than that, just look great on the film and get sort of an Ndamukong Suh level contract. Maybe not quite that much, but certainly in the ballpark. And that's what Howie's trying to avoid. In fact, Mike, if you're an Eagles fan, the more concern you should have about these contracts, specifically Lane and if Fletcher signs soon, is the fact that these guys might be unhappy with these deals in 2 or 3 years down the line if the landscape changes, which I think it will be.
John, there's a tweet that you retweeted from Joe Banner, and he said, can't imagine why agents are doing deals right now. Kelsey, the worst deal of all these early deals. I guess another sign that he thinks his old buddy, Howie Roseman's doing a good job.
Yeah, he does. And Joe knows. He knows how much the salary cap is projected to go up, and he knows these deals come March aren't going to look as good from the player standpoint as they look today. So there's another voice saying it. It's evident that the cap is going up, as I said. Could be as much as $13 million, probably as most have it rising at $11 million. And these contracts are only going to go up. And that's why Joe is surprised that some of these agents are so quick to sign off on these deals when, if you think about it, free agency is not all that far off.
John, I also want to get your thoughts on another tweet you tweeted out. The NFL says reported concussions are up a startling 58%. Reported, the key word as you tweet. We all heard Concussion, the movie, although it didn't do very well in the theaters. I saw it. It really, I'll tell you, you watch that movie, and it changes your view a little bit of what you're watching on a Sunday. But, do you think this is a little fudging of the numbers a little bit?
No, I don't think it's fudging. I think it's fudging from the other side, to be honest with you. The NFL, the only difference is, and this is not a defense of the NFL, is that they're reporting the concussions properly. They were always there. They were just never reported properly. So when you see the number, 58% increase in concussions, people are appalled and they gasp and they say, what's wrong? Why is it getting worse? It's not getting worse. It was far worse back in the day when they said, hey, you got your bell rung, get back on the field and play. So I think that's the context that has to be put into it. And I wrote about it on today's Pigskin earlier this week. I mean, I just think on both sides, there's been such a disingenuous argument in this CTE question. And both sides are just playing these statistics for their particular advocacy, and it's not right. And I always lean on this. I don't know anybody who doesn't know football isn't a violent sport. So anybody who tries to tell you it isn't is lying. But on the other hand, anyone saying that concussions are getting worse on the NFL level is just not educated to this entire process.
John, last one. The Raiders in LV, Vegas, is that where they're going to head, you think?
I can't imagine in a million years. I mean, the NFL has been steadfast. They won't allow a team in Las Vegas because obviously legalized sports gambling. They don't want any part of it. Roger Goodell has said it time and time again over the years, and you still need 3/4 of the league to vote yes if you want to relocate. And there's no way that Mark Davis could get those votes. So I think this is more of Las Vegas replacing Los Angeles as sort of the leverage city to try to get deals done back in your own home base. In the case of the Raiders, obviously Oakland.
All right, more from John at J.F. McMullen, national NFL columnist over at today's Pigskin, and, of course, Eagles over at 97.3 ESPN. WENJ-FM.com. Have a good weekend, man, and we will see you on Tuesday. We'll talk to you Monday. See you on Tuesday.